New clues to Tuesday's explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Schatz. NASA investigators are getting ready to examine a large cone-shaped object found off of the coast of Savannah, Georgia. The object measures 13 feet in diameter. It was retrieved by the crew of a Navy helicopter carrier, the USS Guam. Overnight, the Guam carried the object back to Cape Canaveral. CNN's Brian Ellison spoke with Coast Guard spokesman Jim Simpson just a short time ago.
This morning, a Marine Corps helicopter is going to pick up the cone-shaped object, which is now estimated to weigh 10,000 pounds, from the Navy ship Guam and bring it into an explosive ordnance dump here on the Cape.
What is the best guess as to what it is?
Well, I'm not going to make a guess. It's cone-shaped and it weighs 10,000 pounds, and I think NASA will be able to identify it fairly quickly.
A NASA spokesman says there is not enough evidence at this point to tell if the object is even part of the shuttle. NASA refuses to speculate on what caused the explosion that destroyed Challenger, but it has released pictures of the last 15 seconds of the shuttle's final flight. CNN's Holloman reports now from Cape Canaveral.
NASA investigators have released new pictures of the shuttle launch, which show what officials call an unusual plume coming out of the solid-fueled rocket booster on the right side of the orbiter. CNN has slowed the videotape of the launch taken by a camera located almost underneath the launch pad. NASA spokesman Hugh Harris offers a limited explanation of what the investigatory panel is looking at right now.
Studying film of the flight, they observed what appears to be an unexpected change in the range tracking image, seen as an unusual plume in the lower part of the right SRB area of the system. The cause is still unknown, and neither the board nor NASA will speculate as to the cause or effects of this observation.
The investigators have been in Houston at the Johnson Space Center, and now they're traveling to Huntsville, Alabama, where the solid rocket boosters were designed and propulsion system data is stored. While urging reporters not to draw conclusions, and while saying the team is investigating other possible causes for the disaster, this visual evidence is the closest thing yet to an answer to the question, why? John Holloman, CNN at the Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral.
New clues, perhaps, to the cause of the space shuttle explosion have been plucked from the Atlantic Ocean and flown to the Kennedy Space Center. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Schatz. New pictures released by NASA may reveal the cause of the explosion that destroyed Challenger. The pictures show a different angle of the shuttle than previous tapes of the blast. They also reveal a flame along one of Challenger's solid rocket boosters. But NASA is refusing to speculate on whether or not the flame caused the shuttle tragedy.
Studying film of the flight, they observed what appears to be an unexpected change in the range tracking image, seen as an unusual plume in the lower part of the right SRB area of the system. The cause is still unknown, and neither the board nor NASA will speculate as to the cause or effects of this observation. The board is continuing the extensive gathering and analysis of the data from the accident. This effort will continue to be NASA's and the board's top priority. The investigation of this accident is a complex and highly technical task. NASA cautions against drawing any conclusions until all data has been carefully studied and evaluated.
Now, CNN's Brian Nelson is standing by live at the Kennedy Space Center with the very latest on the investigation. Brian, it's been a busy day down there. Can you bring us up to date?
Well, the most important development this morning, Steve, was the return to the area around the Kennedy Space Station of a 10,000-pound piece of debris, what is believed to be from the Space Shuttle Challenger. This was picked up yesterday about 100 miles off of Savannah, Georgia. It was carried south by the USS Guam, and this morning a U.S. Marine helicopter went out about 20 miles to the Guam, hoisted the piece up into the air, and I believe you can see from the video we now have and have shown earlier this morning that piece of debris being carried to the Canaveral Air Station, which is just south of the Kennedy Space Center. Now, there's no firm confirmation yet about what that piece is. We had a very a very strong lens on our camera when we took this picture. This was the best shot we could get, but it was supposed to be rust-colored, but does not appear to be so from our photograph, and so we and others are ruling out that this piece came from the external fuel tank. However, there is now sustained speculation that this is what is called the frustum. This is the second frustum recovered, or would be, if in fact that is what it is. And a frustum is a piece from the frustum is a piece from the solid rocket booster. Now, if I have a diagram here, and perhaps this will help show it. This is a diagram of the solid rocket booster, and what you see up here, the second piece from the top, just below the nose cone, is what is called the frustum. Now, this contains parachutes and flotation devices for the solid rocket booster, and those are employed after the SRB is jettisoned during liftoff from the external fuel tank and the shuttle. Now, that's what this appears to us to be at the moment, but NASA is not being able to confirm that. No one has managed to get on to the Canaveral Air Station and take a good look at it, but that's what we suspect it is. So that important development, although the way we understand it is that this is not likely to yield many clues as to the cause of the explosion, which consumed the shuttle last Tuesday. Most of the speculation at this point is still surrounding that plume of fire which developed from the SRB, the lower side of the right-hand rocket booster. That is where all the attention is focusing right now. It's an unusual plume. It would not have appeared during a normal launch, and there is expected to be a comment later today from the acting director of NASA, William Graham. And that's it from the Kennedy Space Station, Kennedy Space Center. This is Brian Nelson reporting live.
Thank you, Brian. We are also hoping to be speaking with John Pike. He is the Associate Director of the Federation of American Scientists. Hopefully before the end of this newscast we can speak with him in the nation's capital. Since Tuesday's disaster, some questions about the safety of the shuttle program as a whole have been raised. Like most government agencies, NASA has been trying to trim cost, but NASA's acting administrator says no shortcuts were taken on the shuttle, especially where safety was concerned.
I can say that there were certainly no corners cut, and the engineering tests were as complete as we could humanly make them. The budget situation was brought along, and we didn't get the shuttle built as fast as we wanted to because of funding issues, but we never compromised on safety, and we never compromised on reliability. That was the first rule and the first priority of NASA throughout the program.
Graham was appearing on ABC's This Week with David Brinkley. We will be talking to a man, a scientist, who will help us sort out some of the information, perhaps some of the speculation as to the Shuttle Challenger's demise. Stay with us.
This is Brian Nelson once again live from the Kennedy Space Center, and there are a lot of questions being asked here this morning and a lot of speculation about what may have caused a plume of flame to emerge from a solid rocket booster during liftoff of Challenger last Tuesday. There are also questions about a piece that was retrieved from the ocean and returned here this morning, a piece of debris from Challenger. We're not sure yet what it is. To help us answer some of those questions, we have in our Washington bureau John Pike from the Federation of American Scientists. Mr. Pike, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Mr. Pike?
Yes. Hello, Brian.
You seem to have some audio difficulty.
I can hear you.
All right, we have a problem with our audio line. Mr. Pike, you have perhaps by now seen the plume of flame which came out of the solid rocket booster, the right-hand booster. Can you tell us what you think it might be, what might have caused it?
Well, it looks like there was a problem in the splice between the aft segment and the aft center segment at the area where the solid rocket booster is attached to the rest of the shuttle. That seemed to be the general area where this plume was emerging from the solid rocket booster.
This splice you're talking about is where the two pieces of rocket join?
Right. Actually, the solid rocket booster consists of 4 solid rocket motors stacked on top of each other, and these segments are spliced together, and the plume seems to be emerging from the splice between the bottom segment and the one just above it.
Well, what does that indicate to you? Does it indicate a malfunction in the internal combustion system, or does that indicate a malfunction on the sealing arrangement?
Well, there are a number of possibilities as to how this could have happened. Perhaps there was a crack between the 2 segments. Normally, those segments should fit snugly together. It's possible that some external strain led to a crack in the sealant. But I think that we've been able here to identify fairly closely what you ought to be looking at and narrow down the number of things that they're going to have to investigate.
If you recall, the morning of the launch, the temperature here at the Kennedy Space Center was down, I think, in the 40s at one point. Do you believe that the cold temperatures may have played any role in having this seal come loose?
Well, these solid rocket propellants are tested for both extreme high and extreme low temperatures, but certainly this is one possibility that they would be looking at, although these propellants are tested for considerably lower temperatures.
Now, Dr. Pike, what do you think would have been the effect of this plume? Did it ignite, for example, the external fuel tank?
Well, one of the problems with a plume of very hot gases at this point on the shuttle is that that plume would be emerging very close to the area where the fuel lines from the external tank enter into the orbiter itself to bring the propellants to the engine. And it's certainly a very distinct possibility that that plume did burn through the fuel lines at that point.
Why is it that the SRB itself, or pieces of it, seem to have survived intact? As a matter of fact, they continued on after the explosion.
Well, the solid rocket motors consist of half-inch steel that is stressed to withstand the pressures from inside the motor and consequently would be fairly resistant to the pressures from the explosion outside the motor. All
right. The other thing I wanted to ask you very quickly, very briefly, the piece of material returned today, which you have seen, I believe.
Right.
A piece from the shuttle. What piece do you think that is?
Well, that appears to be what's known as the frustrum, which is part of the front of the solid rocket motor. It reduces the aerodynamic drag of the solid rocket motor and is also part of the container for the parachute used to recover the motor. It's at the opposite end of the solid rocket motor from the area that this plume seemed to be emerging.
All right, Dr. John Pike in Washington, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Brian Nelson reporting live from the Kennedy Space Center.
Thank you, Dr. Pike. Thank you, Brian. That is our news for now. I'm Steve Schatz. Stay tuned for Style. That's up next here on CNN. Of course, we will have more news for you at the top of the hour, including more shuttle coverage, so don't go away.
I'm Dave Walker. Coming up in just a moment, I'll have a complete wrap-up of the day's news on Newsday Sunday. New pictures of an explosion of Space Shuttle Challenger on Tuesday give investigators additional clues, but NASA is still gathering evidence for its probe into what may have caused the tragedy. We'll have a live report from the Kennedy Space Center. We'll also have an update on the election campaign in the Philippines, where thousands of protesters took to the streets today. And we'll tell you what's going on today in that bitter strike against Hormel by the Meatpackers Union. We'll also have a look at weekend sports action and much more coming up in about a minute. But first, here's Steve Koch with a weather update.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
NASA investigators examine a huge object hoisted from the Atlantic, possible debris from Challenger's final tragic voyage. Hello, I'm Dave Walker, and this is Newsday Sunday. New pictures of the shuttle disaster and a cone-shaped object are the latest clues in the Challenger investigation. CNN's Brian Nelson is live at the Kennedy Space Center with details.
The search for answers to the cause of Challenger's explosion is focusing in on some photos released by NASA last night, which apparently show a malfunction in one of the shuttle's solid rocket boosters. We have more on that story now from CNN's John Holloman.
NASA investigators have released new pictures of the shuttle launch, which show what officials call an unusual plume coming out of the solid-fueled rocket booster on the right side of the orbiter. CNN has slowed the videotape of the launch taken by a camera located almost underneath the launch pad. NASA spokesman Hugh Harris offers a limited explanation of what the investigatory panel is looking at right now.
Studying film of the flight, they observed what appears to be an unexpected change in the range tracking image, seen as an unusual plume in the lower part of the right SRB area of the system. The cause is still unknown, and neither the board nor NASA will speculate as to the cause or effects of this observation.
The investigators have been in Houston at the Johnson Space Center, and now they're traveling to Huntsville, Alabama, where the solid rocket boosters were designed and propulsion system data is stored. While urging reporters not to draw conclusions, and while saying the team is investigating other possible causes for the disaster, this visual evidence is the closest thing yet to an answer to the question, why? John Holloman, CNN at the Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral.
Today there is growing reason to believe that an attachment ring on Challenger's right-hand solid rocket booster may have come loose during liftoff and in effect creating a blowtorch of 6,000 degrees. Now there's also some speculation that this may have ignited the external fuel tank. CNN spoke with Dr. John Pike of the Federation of American Scientists.
The solid rocket booster consists of 4 solid rocket motors stacked on top of each other, and these segments are spliced together, and the plume seems to be emerging from the splice between the bottom segment and the one just above it. One of the problems with a plume of very hot gases at this point on the shuttle is that that plume would be emerging very close to the area where the fuel lines from the external tank enter into the orbiter itself to bring the propellants to the engine. And it's certainly a very distinct possibility that that plume did burn through the fuel lines at that point.
There's also a major development today in the continuing search for debris from Challenger. This morning, a Marine helicopter retrieved from a Navy ship, the USS Guam, and you can see that now, a large piece of debris. This is presumed to be a piece of debris from the shuttle Challenger. It was found about 100 miles off of Savannah, Georgia yesterday, carried by the Guam down off the Kennedy Space Center and then hoisted up by a Marine helicopter and carried to the Canaveral Air Station just south of the Kennedy Space Center. It weighs 10,000 pounds, and it is believed to be the frustrum. Now this is a section of the solid rocket booster just below the nose cone. It is the second section, and it houses parachutes and flotation devices for when the solid rocket boosters are jettisoned during liftoff from the shuttle and the external tank. Now, we don't know for sure whether this is indeed the frustrum. As you can see from that picture, it was quite a distance away, so this is still speculation. But NASA is expected to confirm or deny this in a statement later today. This is Brian Nelson reporting live from the Kennedy Space Center.